Constitutional law for no reason remain one of my best legal courses ever offered since I began my journey of becoming a lawyer. I offered constitutional law in my year 2 as a law student, and so far I've never come across a course that I love so much like constitutional law. It remains a very enticing aspect of law, and that's why in this video I'm basically going to walk you step by step on everything you are going to expect in constitutional law. Ironically, many law students complain of constitutional law, especially in my own very school. But constitutional law for me remains the best as far as my journey is concerned. Now, to do this justice to this video, I have categorized this video into 4 stages. The first one will introduce you to the first stages of what you are required to know about constitutional law, and then from there we'll proceed to the first stage. That first stage, I'm going to recommend some textbook you are going to consider or buy in order to be able to pass this through course, because it is actually a 4 credit unit load. You won't like to miss that. It is a big one. By the way, my name is Kingsley Chuku, better known as King's Advocate. I'm currently a 400 level law student, and what I do on this channel is to help students, especially law students, in the challenges of becoming tomorrow lawyer by presenting and promoting videos here every single Wednesday and Saturday. If you are willing to grow your CGPA and have access to explanatory notes and so many more that concerns law, you can consider following this channel by clicking the subscribe button, so that when we post a video, you'll be able to receive it as a notification. Now, we'll proceed to what we are required to know about this very course which you have come to do. So, under the first stage of constitutional law first semester, we should be expecting something that has to do with definition of constitutional law. And the problem with constitutional law, just like the problem of law in general, is that it has no universal acceptable definitions. In other words, you cannot say that this thing is the definition of constitutional law. Are you getting me? So that is where it's going to be a kind of cumbersome work. You are going to define constitutional law in various perspectives according to erudites in the field. You're going to see it from the definitions for KCOM, who is also an authority. You're going to see it, from the definition and perspective of Lord Jenny. You're going to see it from the definitions and perspective of judicial authorities, people like Mikitobi JSC, Okuta JSC, and so many more. Why for JSC? You are going to see their class, what they think that constitutional law is, not what it actually is, because there is no clear universal definition. Furthermore, you are going to see something that has to do with, Professor Mwabeze's definition of constitutional law. Actually, in this stage, basically, you are required to understand the definition of constitutional law from various perspectives. If you are somebody that happens to be in my school, you cannot just come and say, define one constitutional, assuming the lecturer, asks you a question that borders on a clear examination of constitutional law, because I know no reasonable lecturer will tell you, define constitutional law for law. No. Unless the lecturer is very hardcore, academical. That you wake up one morning and didn't prepare and remember you have questions to set and just say define constitutional law. It's not obtainable. So you must put at least 5 definitions of constitutional law you already know. This definition outline relevant to the textbook you are using, which I'm going to recommend at the later part of this video. Stay to this video to the end. I'm going to recommend the textbook you are going to read with. So I advise you to just understand the overview of constitutional law, because you actually be examined to give your overview based on authorities in the field that have defined constitutional law. At this first stage, it is presumable that you have understand constitutional law. The next thing is then, what are the sources of constitutional law? So here we have the constitution itself as the source of constitutional law. So when you talk about the sources of constitutional law, the constitution itself is the main fulcrum of constitutional law. Here we then have the 1999 constitution. If you are in Nigeria watching this video, if you are not a Nigerian, your own constitution of your localities, Indian constitution, Ghana constitution, Uganda constitutions, this becomes your own constitutional law. Because I noticed that many Indians watch our video, the Indian constitution, possibly of 1950, becomes your own source of constitutional law. Then we also have the case judicial decisions as the basis for constitutional law. So it's not just constitutional law. In one of the videos I made on how to answer problem questions, the link is above. That video I talked about types of law courses. We have statutory based courses, we have judicial based courses. So when you talk about constitutional law is the typical statutory based course, in the sense that whatever you are doing in constitutional law has its origin and rooting in what? Statutes. It's just like criminal law. Whatever you are doing in criminal law is statutorily what? Provided. That does not mean that it doesn't have to do with cases. So one of also sources of constitutional law is what? Case authorities. Because where the constitution is silent, it is expected that the court will supplement by providing interpretations. And remember what Oliver Wendehome told us. He said that the law is nothing but what the judge say it is, or what the court say it is. That's why we don't err in law when we say that the case laws or judicial authorities are sources of what? Constitutional law. Then we also have legislation and subsidiary legislations, conventions, various international treaties, customs and practices. These are typically sources of constitutional law. The emphasis of this video is not to teach this because we already have a video that dealt with that on this channel. You can subscribe. When we say subscribe, it simply means you can follow. It is free of charge. But you too basically choose the word subscribe. So when you subscribe, long press it, it will show you the option of all notification or personalized or not. If you put it to all, the application is that whenever we post a video, you will receive it as a notification in your phone. If it's something that you like, you click it and watch it as it happens, and it will yield value and improve your CGPA and resolve down your CGPA so it will not collapse. Now we move to the second stage of what you are required to know in constitutional law, first semester. Actually, in this second stage, it's not quite different from what we have been doing in secondary school, in the sense that here you are just going to see, classifications of constitution. We have written constitution and unwritten constitution. We have rigid and unrigid constitution. We have presidential and parliamentary constitution, and so many more. So what is actually required of you to know is not different from what you already know in your government. If you're actually a person that punctuated in government, it is expected that all law students, right, must pass through government. Yeah, it is even one of the, I think it is compulsory in your job that you are written in government. So that thing you did in your SS3, SS2, that's still related. In fact, during this period, I was using my government textbook, first class government textbook and essential government to answer this thing in my university. So it's not different. Whatever you do there, comprehensive government, that's what I used to answer this area. You're going to just use that thing to know the characteristics of parliamentary, types of constitution. They are all the same. But in this case, it is going to come in an elevated format. So these are the things we are going to know at this stage. Without wasting much of the time, we'll move to the third stage. Third stage is very, very tricky. Third stage, believe me, is what will make you a constitutional law student or break you as a constitutional law student. Do you understand? I repeat, third stage you are into now is what will make you a constitutional law student or what will break you as a constitutional law student. Everything that will add up to your CGPA as far as constitutional law is concerned is concluded. Gone on this third stage. What is this third stage all about? This third stage will introduce you to what we know as core concepts of constitutional law. Here you are going to be introduced to the rudiments or to the workings of very, very essential things that governs constitutional law. Here you are going to see the principles of rule of law as propounded by who? Evidice. You may have come across this in your government, isn't it? So this stage is actually going to introduce you to know the core concept, principles of separation of power. Who is propounding that here? Baron de Montesquieu. Here also you are going to be introduced a little bit to federalism, concept of federalism. But it is the second semester you are going to approach it from the federal power, arrangement of power. But under this first semester, you're also going to be introduced to the concept of federalism and how it works and its connection with the word, constitutional law in its core course as a subject. This is what you are going to know here. You are going to know the concept of rule of law and how we shape a lawyer to reason like a lawyer, and how we shape a judge to reason like a judge, and how we shape a barrister to behave like a barrister. That is what you are going to know under this concept. And then the federalism and how Nigeria operates or how your own country operates in the federal government system. Still on this third stage, you are going to know what they call supremacy of the Constitution. I believe you should have something like section 1.1 of the Constitution, which vigorously affirmed that the Constitution is supreme, right? It goes beyond just that. You have also had the case of AG of Abia State and AG of the Federation, which Nikitobi JSCA stated that the Constitution is the supreme, the Alpha and the Omega. the fountainhead of all laws, the law that all other laws must bow and acknowledge as my Lord and personal Savior. That is what this principle is all about. It's going to teach you everything that has to do with constitution and to what extent the constitution will override any law when there exists a conflict. You are going to see, the supremacy of the parliament and the supremacy of the constitution, telling you that where the constitution is supreme, the parliament is not what? Sovereign. And where the parliament is sovereign, the constitution is often not supreme. Bribery commissioner and renouncing here. I am still remembering my cases I offered in year 2. Why have been here for? The law is doing well, whether I say it or not. So these are the cases we are going to cite. Case of Lankami against AG of Federation. Attorney General of Abia State against Attorney General of Federation. Bribery commissioner against renouncing here. And so many India cases is going to come into play here. You are going to know that this was my sweetest area, and it was indeed the area my lecturer and my prof tested us on. We then come to the first stage. Pay attention. This first stage will actually take your time in your reading, because this one has to do with historical lane of Nigerian constitution. If you are watching this video from another country, it also has to do with the historical lane of your own, the journey of your people's constitution. You cannot offer constitutional law without knowing the history of how it arrived. There has been for every nation certain constitutional developments. That is what we are going to do here. So under this constitutional history, you are going to see the colonial era constitution, starting from the 1914 amalgamation, its administrative backings and how it's operated. You move to the Clifford Constitution of 1922, which first introduced the elective principle. I believe that everybody that's punctuated in the government during his SS2 will be able to know that 1922 Constitution was the first to introduce the elective principle as per Nigeria. Then the Church Constitution of 1946, vigorously coming with regionalism. Then we also have the Macpherson Constitution of 1951, the one that laid the federal tendencies, in the sense that, Macpherson Constitution was that constitution that first of all preempted what we now have as federalism. Then the Latin Constitution came in 1954 to give it a full clothes. It's just as saying that Macpherson, bought the clothes and learned to sew it and made it what it will look like by giving us federalism. From there, we then shift to the Independence and Republican Constitution. Like I said, just make sure we don't take this stage for granted, because you can mess things up here. And by the way, if you are watching this video before we continue, I would like to know the university you are watching from. The purpose of asking you your university is that I learned that many universities have different things or different way they offer their courses. So I would like to get to know your university. If I get to know your university, it will help me to speak to you directly, not just making a general video. I will be speaking to you the way it will suit your university as a beginner. So if you are watching this video from any university, just say, I'm Kingsley, I'm watching from Enugu State University. It's okay for me, and I will take note of that. So don't fail to do that. Let's continue with our journey of historical development. We then move from the 1960 Constitution, which was the first, the parliamentary constitution. And of course, you know that 1960 Constitution was that independence constitution, which was actually not a homegrown constitution, but given to us by our own Britain, who we are still representing. Then we have the 1963 Constitution, which made a huge, remarkable achievement by removing the Queen as our head of state and giving us our own personal head of state. And then we have the military eras, the 1966, 1979, 1983, 1989, 1999. Their Moses operandi now. Suspension, modification, decree, edit. Suspension, modification, decree, edit. That is how they were ruling us from 1966 up to down to 1999. They were just coming and going, blowing hot and cold. You're also going to examine that and to what extent it applies. That is what we are going to know in first semester. Then from there, also move to the civil rule, the 1979 Constitution, which was the first presidential constitution. 1979 Constitution was unique, just like the one of Macpherson and so many more. They were unique because they introduced some certain things. 1979 championed what we now have as presidential, first in the annal of our history. We have also the 1989 draft constitution, which was aborted. So 1989 didn't come as a reality. Then from there, we move to the aborted 1993 interim, Abacha Bruha on all his dealings, where he intended to make himself the lifetime president. But God said, no, you must join me in the world beyond. So we are going to also know that. Then you also note about the 1999 Constitution finally, which is the correct order we are operating on. So these are the things you are going to know for first semester. I will advise you, if you are somebody sitting at home, to start early on this course, because constitutional law is voluminous. That is why many hated the course. But for me, I loved it because I don't know why. Don't even ask me. For you now reading this textbook, I'm recommending some certain textbook for you now. Pay attention to this textbook I'm recommending. I will recommend the Nigerian Constitutional Law with A.C. Malami. Reason is that it is the most popular one. Then I will also recommend Constitutional Law by Igbenyi. I think those in the East, possibly Ebonyi State, will know this one better. So Igbenyi is another textbook I'm recommending. There is also a case book on Constitutional Law by University Press. There is also Constitutional Law in Nigeria by Oyewo. But then, one thing I want you to know is that for this course, Constitutional Law is not universal in application. I want to clarify what I mean by this. Constitutional law for schools, they don't often follow this syllabus as it is. Most schools often adopt how they work. For instance, if you are in my school, the prof that taught me will often prioritize the core concept of constitutional law as the dominant factor in all this. So to do no textbook will do justice to that principle, rule of law and separation of power, because it has its roots from a theory that was provided by, Baron de Montesquieu and so many. So basically, what I would advise you to do is that for now, if you are somebody still at home, you can lay hands on A.C. Malami, which is the most popular, or Igbenyi, which is the most popular. But when you resume, pay attention to the material your own lecturer is using. The reason being that constitutional law is diverse. Everybody is free to diverse or to disagree. They are all disagreeing. The authors are beating themselves. So, but if you know the one your lecturer law, please don't say that I recommend. Stick to that one. Some lecturer, the one that taught me, called this textbook I mentioned as rubbish. In fact, I bought many of them, but I didn't use it. If I'm in my school and this lecture I'm talking about is involved, you may consider, getting this topic I called online. And that reminds me, Law Made Simple Legal is on Google, where we post a lot of write-up and case notes. So on the screen, you could see it. Just type it and you'll see it. So I will see you on the next video. We have made a lot of video. If you wish to see more, click this link and it will direct you to more video where you will find value.